What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We're here with some more NFL DFS picks and lineup advice for DraftKings and FanDuel. This time for the single game showdown slate on Thursday Night Football to kick off Week 15. We have the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In this video, we will discuss the injuries that impact tonight's slate. Quite a few guys out, quite a few guys returning, and they certainly will decide how we build our lineups tonight. We'll look at low risk lineup construction tips and core plays, and then we'll talk about some strategies and tips and some angles to help you win the biggest prizes that FanDuel and DraftKings have to offer. Welcome, I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy, single game $1 million winner. Happy fantasy football playoffs week for those who celebrate. And if you're still playing DFS, which is why you clicked this video, we got some money to make tonight as well. So let's start with the Atlanta Falcons. Drake London remains out, their stud wide receiver. He'll miss another game with his knee injury. And also on the injury report, there are a few guys that are questionable with 3 limited practices this week. I wouldn't worry about it. I expect them all to play. The most notable being Kyle Pitts. Their head coach, Raheem Morris, said they expect him to play. So we assume that Pitts is as normal. Now, if we look at the wide receiver usage in Drake London's absence during these 3 games, and we try to get a sense of who they're going to throw the ball to. First of all, let's look at last week specifically. Routes run last week. David Sills led the team in routes run at 33. He's 3K on DraftKings. Kyle Pitts came in second with 32 routes. Next, it was Darnell Mooney, 30 routes. Very forgettable season for Darnell Mooney. Should have had a touchdown last week. He stepped out of bounds, but alas, he remains without one. And then we have Dylan Drummond with 24 routes. He's $2,000. And then finally, we have Devin Tompkins, who's bounced around the league a little bit with 4 routes last week. In these 3 games, the total targets for these guys are Kyle Pitts, 23, by far and away the leader in this pass catching group. Then we have Darnell Mooney with 12, David Sills with 11, Dylan Drummond also 11. So naturally, you can imagine with Sills getting 3-4 targets a game, Drummond getting 3-4 targets a game, the field wanting to get in Bijan, Bucky Irving, Baker Mayfield, the Tampa Bay receivers, Kirk Cousins. They're naturally going to play the cheaper guys. David Sills at 3K, Dylan Drummond at 2,000. They will be extremely cheap and popular, as they should be based on recent usage. However, a word of caution. One, they haven't been great. So there's always a chance something changes when guys have not been great. The likelihood of that on a shorter week is a little less likely. It's still a possibility. But also, the team has been talking up Chris Blair, practice squad wide receiver. In fact, his name was dropped by the head coach, Raheem Morris, saying that they're likely to elevate Chris Blair for this game, give him a shot. Now, this could take snaps away from Mooney, Sills, Drummond, and it's hard to know otherwise. I think it would be Mooney or Drummond. Sills mostly a slot guy, and Blair didn't play that much slot in the preseason. I think Drummond would be the guy that has the most risk here. But either way, Chris Blair, if you were with us for preseason DFS, Chris Blair, by the way, minimum price on DraftKings, he racked up 12 catches, 197 yards, 2 touchdowns in 3 NFL preseason DFS games this season. So, productive in preseason, was a productive last preseason as well. Name dropped by the coach. Now, again, are you going to play Chris Blair in your double ups? No. Are you going to play Chris Blair in your small field contest? Probably not, unless you're playing 6 to 10 lineups and maybe you want to throw him in one. But Chris Blair is a great pivot away from those guys if you're 150 maxing or 20 maxing. Or just in general, maybe he gets enough playing time to ruin the value of either Sills or Drummond. So, just something to think about here as we're looking for ways to get different from the chalk tonight at the bottom of the salary range. All right, anything else for Atlanta? I don't think so. Let's move over to Tampa Bay, where they have some extremely exciting news. Mike Evans returns from his concussion and collarbone injury, maybe a little earlier than expected. He's officially questionable, activated off injured reserve. He will play tonight. And then Jalen McMillan, who has not played all year. Really scary injury in the preseason. Fractured 3 vertebrae, herniated 2 discs. I don't know how he's back playing football, but he is. He's activated off injured reserve, and he will play tonight as well. Now, how this rotation is going to look is anyone's guess. Emeka Ibuka will still be one of the leaders. Evans will probably go back to a pretty normal role. McMillan will mix in with Godwin. I imagine they play different roles, but they will mix in. And it really relegates Sterling Shepard and Tez Johnson to very far behind, not likely to see many snaps at all. And the one thing, despite Evans and McMillan just being activated, despite them just coming off injured reserve, it's not soft tissue injuries for either one of those guys. So no real risk of re-aggravation or conditioning issues. In Evans' case, it was a broken collarbone. He has been conditioning for the past however many weeks. McMillan, with vertebrae issues. Once he's cleared by the doctor, he's good to take hits. He's been conditioning as well. So we don't have to worry about them being limited in terms of conditioning or re-injury risk. It's just really how they want to use the receivers. And as outsiders, we don't really know. But know that all will get enough work. All have chances to be extremely likely to put up stats in this game. And as a result, because no one really knows, Evans, Ibuka, Godwin, and McMillan, all relatively low owned, not like 10% owned or anything. Maybe in McMillan's case, he will be low owned, but especially at captain. And is it hard to envision a scenario where any of these guys put up 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, 100 yards and a touchdown? I don't think so. And they're all 3% less captain ownership, MVP ownership on FanDuel as well. So they all make for great high-risk captain MVP plays. They all make for great Bucs passing attack angles. If you're picking two of those, maybe pairing them with Baker Mayfield. Now, anything else? Yes, Cade Otton. He is out. Well, he's doubtful. Likely not going to play. That gives us another value play. If we look at last year, Cade Otton missed 3 games for the Buccaneers. In those games, they had Payne Durham, who's still on the roster. They had Devin Culp, who is still on the roster. And they had Ko Keefe, who was their fullback tight end guy. He's on injured reserve now. They're going to call it Tanner Taula to be the number 3 tight end blocking guy tonight. So we can kind of directly compare what they did last year. Now, it's another year. Maybe someone leapfrogged the other one. Don't really think that's the case. If we look at last year, in the 3 games that Ott missed, and let's go to their prices here. Payne Durham. Let's actually spell his name. He's $600 on DraftKings, by the way. He ran 92 routes and drew 12 targets in 3 games. Next is Devin Culp. He ran 19 routes and drew 6 targets, which is a crazy target per route run rate. But also, while the 92 to 16 looks pretty wide, a big gap came in that first game that Ott missed. Culp closed the gap a little bit in games 2 and 3 to where he ran 10 or less routes. It was a 10 or less route difference compared to Payne Durham. So there's a chance that Culp has a role here tonight as well. Meanwhile, Ko Keefe, who is now Tanner Tola, who will be called up from the practice squad, he ran just 4 routes and saw 0 targets. So we don't really have to worry about this guy here. Let's show you him. We don't have to worry about him. It's really Durham who will be popular. And if you want that pivot away, kind of like the Atlanta receiver situation, you can pivot from Durham to Culp, who is the minimum price. Now, again, Durham is the most likely to catch passes and be the leader of the Tampa Bay tight end room. They are also very likely to run 3 receiver sets more often now that these guys are back and they're without Cade Otton. So these are all things you just need to know as you're building lineups for tonight. Their left guard, Bryn Bredesen, is on injured reserve now, but they are getting back Tristan Wirfs. So it's actually a bump. Even though it's a 1-for-1 swap, Wirfs is one of the best tackles in the league, so it's a little bit of a bump to Tampa Bay's offense. But on their defense, they're missing 2 guys. Their inside linebacker, Servatier Dennis, and they're also missing their starting strong safety, Tyke Smith. So 2 defensive injuries for Tampa Bay. That is a bump to Atlanta's offense because God knows they certainly need it with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. All right, I think we covered it all there. We did. Let's talk about low-risk lineup construction tips. And that's for 50-50s, double-ups, head-to-heads on FanDuel and DraftKings. Have to beat half the field to double your money. And generally, we like to play both quarterbacks, both running backs, jam in any obvious values. And I think we can do that tonight. There's one question, though. Let's get a water sip break. A lot of injuries to talk about, so we need the water sip break a little early. So, Bijan will be the most popular captain tonight. We play him. We play Bucky Irving, Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins. At least 2,100. And now, honestly, it's pretty easy. We can just play Payne Durham, the value starting tight end. And now we can get up to whether we want Falcons defense or we just want the popular value in David Sills. Either are options. The other way here, you could leave out Cousins or Bucky. And Bucky at 10-2 is kind of crazy when he's playing 50-60% of the snaps. Not really someone with that kind of role we want to pay $10,200 for. Rashad White still in the mix. Sean Tucker still getting touches, including red zone touches last week. So you could go something like this and go a little more balanced and play Kyle Pitts, who will be extremely popular, 6,400. And if we fit in Payne Durham, what does that look like? 7,400. We could play Darnell Mooney. That doesn't give us much. Let's take Durham out. What if we played like David Sills or Dylan Drummond? 6K. Now we could play a kicker. And that seems good as well. I think you still probably want to jam in all 4, but I think there's plenty of merit to playing these 3 without Bucky Irving. Again, limited split at an elevated price tag. It's tough to swallow, but we do have the value to fit it in today. Now on FanDuel, let's scroll up. Bijan here. Bucky, Baker, Kirk Cousins. 2650 left per player. If we play Payne Durham over here, he is 1400. Very nice price as well. That doesn't really give us anyone to play here. We're not going to play any one of these guys. So you want to leave out Bucky or Kirk. And Kirk has been so bad that I really don't mind leaving him out of this build. Now, defensive injuries are a little concerning if you choose to leave him out for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's say we leave him out. We put in Kyle Pitts. We could play Jalen McMillan. We're not going to do that. If we take Durham out, that doesn't work either. Let's try this. Let's go Durham. And instead of Bucky, let's play Kirk. Let's just try this. I have 81. Again, no one. Take Durham out again. And we play... See, David Sills is 6,400 here. So really, even if you're trying to get away from Bucky or Kirk Cousins, there aren't really any good constructions to fit in some high floor plays around them. So it depends. Either way, I think you can play 4 tonight, our normal strategy. Bucky gets enough touches. He's electric. I think we can make that work. All right, let's go back to DraftKings now, and let's discuss high-risk contests, which is the reason that most of you are here, how to win the biggest prizes that FanDuel and DraftKings have to offer us tonight. So, the most popular captains tonight. Bijan will be the runaway most popular captain MVP, especially on FanDuel. And then we have Baker, especially on FanDuel, but on DraftKings as well. Then we have Bucky Irving. And then we have Kyle Pitts, who is pretty much their wide receiver 1, as we talked about at the top of the show with his targets and route participation. And the wide receiver 1 at $6,400 will allow you to jam in one more extra stud or one more mid-range over a value. So expect Kyle Pitts to be extremely popular at captain on DraftKings tonight. So if you're not using any of those guys, Tampa Bay wide receivers included, you will have a low-owned captain. Now, speaking of those wide receivers, again, we're probably likely to see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. We are expecting Egbuka, who's been, if you've seen any tweets out there, one of the most inefficient wide receivers in the second half. A lot of that is partly him. Some is due to Baker Mayfield. Some of it's variance. But he's been incredibly inefficient. Does that mean they throw to him less today? Does he run a little bit less routes in favor of Evans, Godwin, McMillan? Hard to say. Short week, we don't really know the answer. So we lean into that uncertainty, and we play these guys at captain when they're low owned, and we mix and match them in the flex spots when they all have lower ownership than they probably should if we had a week of data. So it's better to be ahead of the field than it is to be 1 week behind and trying to chase. One other interesting note here is that Tampa Bay is running a decent amount of 2 running back sets. So not just fullback plus running back, but 2 running backs. If we look at when Bucky returned 2 weeks ago, they played 2 running backs. So 2 of Bucky, Rachaad White, Sean Tucker on 5% of their plays. Last week, that increased to 14%. So they had 2 of their running backs, White, Irving, Tucker, on 14% on the field together for 14% of their plays. So it allows you to play 2 of those guys together. But 2, it also raises the floor and ceiling of those secondary guys in Rachaad White, who's 4,200, and then Sean Tucker, who no one's really going to play at 2,400. So good reasons to play low-owned guys in a backfield that has historically been pretty productive. The popular values, as we talked about, David Sills at 3K, Dylan Drummond at 2K, Payne Durham at 600 on DraftKings. Very straightforward who the values will be. Pivots away from those guys. If you're playing a popular captain or you need an extra low-owned play in your large field GPP lineup, is Jalen McMillan, 3,800. He was super productive down the stretch last year. Sean Tucker, who we just talked about, extremely talented guy. Got some red zone work last week. Only going to play 8 to 15 snaps, but he's been productive when he gets the touches. Devin Culp, we talked about as the pivot away from Payne Durham. To show you him really quickly, $200. And Chris Blair, again, large field only type of play probably. And he's not even on the active roster yet. So make sure by 4 p.m. Eastern, the Falcons do elevate him to the active roster today. If they don't, then obviously he can't play tonight. So pretty straightforward slate, but a really fun slate because we have a lot of options, a lot of lower owned guys, a lot of pivots, a lot of situations that the field is projecting as certainty when in reality it's pretty fragile. Let's go to the lineup builder. You guys liked this segment last week. I'll just show you what our builder is spitting out with our typical showdown rules as its most used players. And again, building for large field GPPs. Let's go to the builder. And I will full screen so you guys can see it. I know the audio cut out randomly last video. I will double check to make sure that doesn't happen here in this video. Yeah, it looks like we're good. I'll keep checking the audio just to be sure. But this is DraftKings. Let's go to the lineups. and we see the total exposure here. It loves Bucky Irving. It loves Bijan, so it loves the running backs. It loves Kirk Cousins, Kyle Pitts. And again, look at the receivers here. Ibuka, Godwin, Evans, all in 40% plus of the lineups. It's not using Jalen McMillan as much. It likes Algier, Sean Tucker. So despite this being the PPR scoring of DraftKings, it loves the running backs tonight. 4 running backs in the top 10 exposures. Extremely interesting. And on FanDuel, remember, if you followed the advice from Monday's video on FanDuel, you probably printed money because the builder loved kickers, and it also loved, as I said explicitly in that video, that it loves 2 special teams players per lineup. And if you did that, you were way in contention in that Chargers and Eagles game. All right, so if we look at what the builder is telling us for FanDuel today, again, with all of our rules included, kind of the same thing over here. Bucky, Bijan, but then look, similar to last game, Buccaneers defense, Zane Gonzalez, Falcons defense, Chase McLaughlin. And again, this is a byproduct of FanDuel's pricing and their half-point PPR scoring. These guys are naturally going to get boosted over the lower values because those values need to do a lot more on FanDuel to enter the optimal lineup, especially when we have studs that may not perform, like Kirk Cousins, or we're missing a stud, like Drake London, or the other studs like Mike Evans and Ibuka are a little bit lower price, and their roles are a little uncertain tonight. So most used plays here tonight, you'll see. This is position exposure. Let's go to total exposure so you can guys see. It's using Bucky and Bijan in nearly 80% of lineups. That's crazy. Doesn't change much, but let's see here. Anything else that stands out? Interesting. Doesn't use Kyle Pitts as much. That's interesting. So maybe FanDuel's telling us a pivot away. Remember, it didn't use. It actually did use Rondé Gatson a lot last game, but we can make up for that with the kicker and defense usage. So just really interesting to think about as we build lineups for tonight. All right, let's go back and let's switch to me on screen. Welcome back. Go back to DraftKings. And our daily plug will be up. Bismo has written up the slate in his frame of mind with his rankings, his slate notes, his lineup construction tips for specific contest types. A lot of you who are lineup builder members asked, what are some of the rules that you use? They're taken straight from the plug and our showdown guide. So if you read the daily plug, read which type of contest you're playing, you can go apply those rules directly in the lineup builder. We have some Saturday slates coming up soon, some holiday slates coming up soon. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to get notified when we go live. Upload any videos. It won't just be the typical Monday, Thursday, Friday night. We'll have some other ones as well. So subscribe to the channel. It's free to do so. Helps us out. Helps you out. Any questions, drop a comment. I will gladly answer them before the slate begins tonight at 8:15 p.m. Eastern. For Occupy, I'm Brian. Thanks for listening. Good luck and enjoy tonight's Bucs and Falcons showdown slate.